Okay, Rabbi Sai. So it's we'll be talking about Chanukah. You know, we all know the piyut of Mo'oz Tzur. We don't know who wrote it, but it's ancient. It's from the middle of the 13th century. And I want to focus on the stanza of Yevonim Nikbetzu Alai, which is about Chanukah. So we say Yevonim Nikbetzu Alai, Azai, B'yemei Chashmanim. So the Yevonim gathered against us. The Greeks gathered against us, B'yemei Chashmanim, the time of the Chashmonoim. Ufortzu choymois migdolai v'timu kol hashmanim. Uminois hakankanim nase neis lashoishanim b'nei bino yemei shmoino kovu shir urinonim. Now, the main point of this is the neis of the Pach HaShemen. The beginning of Nikbitzu Alai and Fortzu choymois migdolai is not connected. Really, the expression Partzu Choymois Migdolai is a strange expression. It really means that they breached the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. It's referred to over here as Migdolai. I have a suspicion it's supposed to be Migdoli because the Beis HaMikdash is singular. It's just that in order that it should rhyme, we say Migdolai. But in any case, how does this connect? The Partzu Choymois Migdolai, how does it connect to the Timu Kol Hashmanim? So, it could be because there's a Bavuste Kasha that we paskin, the Gemara in the Sugya of Reb Chanines, Gan HaKoyanim in Psochim, that Mashkin Beis Mitbochaye Dochon, that liquids in the Beis HaMikdash are not Mekabel Tumah. Even Tumas Atzmon Ein Lohem. So how do we say that they defiled the Shmanim? The Shmanim were in the Beis HaMikdash, and in the Beis HaMikdash, liquids are not Mekabel Tumah. So, but there's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Nun Beis that says that the Chashmonoim were goyneis, the stones of the Mizbeach sheshiktzum anshe Yovon, by using them for Avodah Zarah, and therefore they were no longer usable. So the Gemara says that in spite of the fact that Ein Adam Oise Davar She'enoi Sheloi, so how was the fact that the Yevonim used these stones for Avodah Zarah? How did that answer the stones? Ein Adam Oise Davar She'enoi Sheloi. So it's the Chegdish. So the Gemara says, Kra Ashkechu V'dorish, they dash in the Pasuk in Yechezkel that says, Uvo Paritzim V'chileluha, that Klei HaMikdash were Yoitze L'chulin al Yedei the Paritzim, and it became Hefker, and Memela they were Nesar al Yedei the Shimush for Avodah Zarah. So says the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Nun Beis. L'chara, this idea of Bo Pritzim V'chileluha is only shayach to the Avnei HaMizbeach. But there's a Tshuvas Chasam Sofer in Yeridei Siman Reish Lamed Gimel, where he says, Beshitas Aravid, that the entry of the Pritzim into the Beis HaMikdash was mafkia the Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash entirely. That the Kedusha HaMikdash is Peikeah through Boim Pritzim V'chilalu. Now you know that Mashkin Sheyotzu, even mashkim of Hegdish, if they yoitze from the out of the Beis HaMikdash, they are mekabel tumah. And the Mele, it comes out that through the Partzu Choymois Migdolai, since they breached the walls of the Beis HaMikdash lost its kedusha, and once the Beis HaMikdash lost its kedusha, so the mashkin are already mekabel tumah because they're no longer in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Partzu Choymois Migdolai is the Hakdama to Timu Kol Hashmanim. If not for Partzu Choymois Migdolai, they couldn't be Metame Kol Hashmanim. But since Partzu Choymois Migdolai, Memela Timu Kol Hashmanim. It could be that that's also the Diktuk Haloshin of Yevonim Nikbitzu Olai, which why are we talking that they gathered against us? Earlier we say Dvir Kocher Heviani Ubo Noiges Vihiglani. The oppressor came and he exiled me. He came. Over here, we're talking about nikbitzu. They gathered. Why is the gathering relevant? But you know that the Rishonim already ask that how would they metama? A goy is not mekabel tumah michayim. Only a yid is mekabel tumah. And there's a takana that they made goyim kizovim, but that was only one of the Yudches Dover, which was after the time of the Neis Chanukah. The Yudches Dover were nigzar by the Talmidim of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So the Rogatchover in the Tzofnes Paneach al Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Chanukah says that there's a Gemara in Chulin, Ligyoin ha'oiver mimakom lamakom, a legion of soldiers that goes from place to place, and they enter the house is Tamei. She'ein lecha kol ligyoin v'ligyoin she'ein loy kama karpalin, because the soldiers in those times used to have a head of a dead man with them, and therefore, if they enter the house, the house is Tamei. Now, so it comes out that how are the Yevonim metamei the Shmanim? Because they were a ligyoin. And ein lecha kol ligyoin v'ligyoin she'ein loy kama karpalin. So memela, it was Yevonim nikbitzu alai. If one Yevoni would enter, and we wouldn't be choishish for tumah, because a guy can't be metameh. But since ein lecha ligyoin v'ligyoin she'ein loy kama karpalin, so memela, that's the diktuk haloshin I'm saying, that Yevonim nikbitzu alai. Since they were nikbitzu, so they were a ligyoin, and and they were partzu chaymes migdolai, and memela the migdash became ois migdash. Memela they were able to be metame the shmanim. Okay, so that's on the surface, but I want to say that there's a deeper meaning to this. You know, Chazal say that the Yevonim said to Klal Yisrael, Kisvu lochem al keren hashor, right on the horn of an ox, she'ein lochem chelik be'elokei Yisrael, that you don't have a part in Elokei Yisrael. L'chayre, I mean, I reisha lav seifa, I seifa lav reisha. This is a contradiction in terms, because if he's Elokei Yisrael, obviously we have a chelik in him. And if we have no chelik in him, he's not Elokei Yisrael. So what does it mean? Ein lochem chelik be'elokei Yisrael. It's also interesting, the lashon chelik be'elokei Yisrael. We say that we're his chelik. Ki chelik Hashem amoy. We are his chelik. But what does it mean that we have a chelik in him? What is that supposed to mean? You know, the Gemara says that Ner Chanukah, we make a bracha of Asher Kedeshonu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu lahadlik Ner Chanukah. Frag the Gemara, heichon tzivanu. What do you mean tzivanu? Where were we commanded lahadlik Ner Chanukah? Zog the Gemara, Amar Reb Nechemye, she'al avicha v'yageitcha z'keinecha v'yoyim rulach. Now, this pasuk that Reb Nechemye is bringing as a source for the chiyuv to listen to the Chachamim, to be Mekayim, Takonis Chachamim. This pasuk is in Parshas Ha'azinu. It's one of a series of psukim that are talking about, contemplating about the history of mankind and of Klal Yisrael. Yes, remember the years of yore. Binu shnois dor vador. Understand the years of generation and generation. Then it says, Sha'al avicha v'yageitcha, zekeinecha v'yoimrulach, ask your father, and he will relate to you. And zekeinecha, your elders, v'yoimrulach, and they will tell you. And the next pasuk says, B'hanchel el yoim goyim, b'hafridai b'nei adam, which is from the beginning of world history, that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave goyim their inheritance, and b'hafridai b'nei adam, he separated men. The Dor HaPalaga. So we're taking this pasuk over here of Zechor, between the Zechor Yemais Olam and the Zechor Yemais Olam Binu Shnais Devedor and the B'hanchel El Yoin Goyim Ba'afrida B'nei Adam. So we're plucking out this pasuk in middle of Sha'al Avicha V'Yageitcha Zikanecha V'Yomilach, and we're saying that this pasuk is telling us to be Mekayim Takonos Chachamim. Seems kind of strange. I mean, what's the kesher between the Pshuta Shel Mikra and this drasha? How does it connect over here? You know, Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Ba'aloisecha, we all know, says, Lama Nismecha, the Parshas HaMenorah, so and he says that because Aaron to the Karbonos of the Nesiim, because when Aaron saw that the Karbonos of the Nesiim were accepted, so he Cholsha Oz Daitoi, he felt bad. Sheloi Hoya Imayim Bechanukah, that he wasn't part of it. So the Rebbeinu Shalom was menachem him with Ato Madlik Umetiv Es Haneiros. The Ramban Bariches brings Midrash Chachamim that this is referring to the Neiros Chanukah. Okay. But maybe we can ask, and maybe we should ask, why really was Aharon not mishtatif in the Chanukah Sanasiyim? These karbonis were karbonis nedova. As Rashi says, Neso'om libam lehisnadev. Rashi in Parshas Nosai. And nobody told Aaron not to do so. So why was he the one? Everybody was bringing karbonis, and he stayed behind. He didn't bring karbonis. And only when he saw that the karbonis were accepted, it was Chol Shas Daitei. Now, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him that Shalcha G'doyla Mishalayim, and the Lashon HaMedrash is G'doyla Mizu Ata Mesukon. That's the nechama that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Aaron. But we get a clear impression that if he would have been part of the Chanukah Sanasim, he wouldn't have gotten this. In other words, Ligdoila Mizu Ata Mesukon. He didn't know that he was going to get the Gdoila Mizu. He didn't bring it. He didn't bring the Karbanos Sanasim. If he didn't bring the Karbanos Sanasim, and it was Chol Shas Daitoi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, you have something greater. It would seem that the something greater that Aaron got, he got it only as a result of the Chol Sha'oz Daitoi Sheloi Hoya Imayim Bechanukah. If not for the Chol Sha'oz Daitoi Sheloi Hoya Imayim Bechanukah, he wouldn't have gotten it. So that needs to be explained. You know, the Gemara says in Yoima, Omer Reb Asi, Lama Nimshelo Esther L'Shachar. Loy Malacha. Because it says, Lamanasech Ala Yeles HaShachar, which refers to Esther. So Lama Nimshelo Esther L'Shachar, Loy Malacha, Ma Shachar Soif Kol HaLaylo, Af Esther Soif Kol HaNisim. Frag the Gemara, Esther is the end of all Nisim. It's not true. Va'ike Chanukah. Chanukah is after Purim, not on the calendar, but in time. Answers the Gemara, Nitna Lichtoiv Ka'amrinan. I mean to say, Esther is the last nace that was nitten to be written. The nace Chanukah is not written in the Tanakh. Now, the question is, I mean, is it that the Neis Chanukah was loy nitten lichtoy? It wasn't given to be written, and Esther's Neis is the last Neis that was given to be written. The Neis of Chanukah wasn't written because it was after the Tkufas Hanavim. There was no one to write it. There was nowhere to write it. It's not that the Neis is loy nitan li kosev. So it must be. And Reb Tzadok says that the Neis took place in the time of after the Chasimas Hanavua because it's a Neis Shaloi Nitan Likosef. In other words, and it has to do with the essence of this Neis. It's the kind of Neis that's not for writing, and therefore this Neis takes place in the time of after Nevuah, when there's no longer Nevuah. But in other words, this is a nace that's shayach to Torah Shebal Peh. It's a nace of Loinit and Likosif. The Lashon HaAcheres, Kvo'um, V'asom, Yomim Tovim, B'halal V'hoidah, wasn't done through Nevuah, but it was done through Chocham Adiv Minavi. And not because there were no Nevi'im. It's because this is a nace that needed to be nikva as a yontiv through Chachmei Yisrael, through Torah Shebal Peh. Avada, this needs to be explained. And it's also, l'chora, we should understand that if the Nes Chanukah is a Nes that is Megale Torah Shebal Peh, it's a revelation of the Chacham Odif Minavi after the Psikas HaNevuah. So probably the Gzeira that this Nes was an outgrowth of was also a Gzeira against Torah Shebal Peh in particular. And it's obvious because the Gzeira was La'ashkicham Torah Secha. Now Torah Shebechsav, you can't forget because it's written. La'ashkicham Torah Secha is something that shayach only to Torah Shebal Peh. So the Gzeira was a Gzeira against Torah Shebal Peh, and therefore the Nitzachim is celebrated through Torah Shebal Peh. And this Avada is shayach mitzad the Toichin Ha'inyin to the time in history where there's no longer Nevuah. It's the time when things are no longer nitnli kosef. It's the time of Torah Shebal Peh. You know, there's a Midrash Chazal in Pirkei Heicholos where it says that Kvoida, V'hoida, V'hadara Shel Torah was Nizgala in the time of Bayis Sheni. And it's also Mavur and Chazal that this is somehow a Zeh L'umazeh to Malchus Yavon. Like it says in the Seder Olam Rabbah. It says, V'hatzfir v'hasoir Melech Yavon. Who Melech Harishon? Who Alexander Moikdoin? Shemolach Yud Beis Shona. Ad kan, until this time, Hoyu Haneviim Misnabim Beruach HaKodesh. There was still Nevuah. Nevi'im were Misnabim Beruach HaKodesh. But, Mikan ve'elech, Hat Oznecha Ushma Divrei Chachamim. So it's mefurish over here that the revelation of Torah Shebal Peh comes dafke out of the conflict and the clash with the Greeks, with Yavon. It was at the time of the Malchus Yavon that Nevuah was nifsak and Torah Shebal Peh is mikan ve'elech hat oznecha ushma divrei chachamim. So why is Yavon the zeh l'umazeh of Torah Shebal Peh in particular? And how is Yavon a contributor to the Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh? You know, in Yirmiyah it says, Al Kain, he come, Aryeh Miyar, Ze'ev Arovois Yishdedeim, Nomer Shoyked Al Orehem. Kol Hayoytze Mimena Yitoref. Chazal say that in this pasuk, the Nomer, the tiger, is referring to Yavon. So also it says in Daniel, Ba'asar Deno, Chazo Haveis, Va'oru Acharai Kenomer. And Chazal say that the Nomer in this pasuk is Yavon. How do we find in Yavon the characteristics of a tiger, of a Nomer? There's only one place where I found in Chazal where they talk about Nomer acting as a Yavon acting as a Nomer, and that's in Bereshit Rabbah, Parshat Tzadik Tes, where it says about Yavon, Shehoisa minameres b'gzeiroisea al Yisrael. She was tigering, minameres. It's making a verb out of the noun nomer. Shehoisa minameres b'gzeiroisea al Yisrael. Voimeres lohem kisvu lochem al keren ashur she'elochem chelik b'lekei Yisrael. No, but Avada, it's self-understood that we have no clue what the Medrash is saying over here. Why in this Gzeira, do we see that Yavon is acting as a tiger? Shehoisa minameres al Yisrael, voimeres kisvu lochem al keren ashur she'en lochem chelik b'lekei Yisrael. You know, the etzem zach that we say that Yovan is compared to a nomer, the Maharal says in the Ner Mitzvah that the meaning is that Yovan has the characteristic of azus ponim. Azus ponim means he's shameless, he's brazen, because the tchuna of azus is the tchuna of a nomer. Like the Mishnah says, have az kanomer. And why is it that the midah of azus ponim defines Yovan? Says the Maharal, the zois hamida hi shayeches el asher hu muchon el hachochma. Ukemoy she'amru lo yabay shalomim. Now Yovan represents chochma, chochmas Yovan, and somebody who's predisposed to wisdom. He is a az ponim, az kanomen. So what does this mean? In other words, we usually talk about azus ponim, as a negative characteristic, but it seems like most things it's complex. I mean, it's not so posh. So, what does this mean, l'chora? That chokhmah is spiritual, and therefore the aspiration for acquiring chokhmah and the acquiring of chokhmah require a leap beyond where I'm at, because where am I? I'm, down here. And in order to be toifes chachma, I have to go beyond the self. So it requires azus. You need to be bold in order to aspire to chachma, in order to be kaina chachma. So azus is about the courage to go beyond myself and gain a deeper, better understanding. Now, a baishin, Chazal tell us, a baishin is einay lamed, because a baishin, somebody that's shameful, he's wrapped up within himself. He doesn't have the courage. He's not bold enough to move beyond, and he doesn't aspire to something that's above where he's at. The Maharal in the Derech Chaim on the Mishnah and Ovis of Havei Az Kenomer, the Maharal says, Havei Az Kenomer mipnei sheha'adam hu bal choimer, v'ha'adam mitzad choimroi hu k'may even doiming. He's like a rock. The einoi chafetz b'shum davar. He doesn't want anything. He's just what he is. V'al zeh omer Havei Az Kenomer. Somebody that has azus is not like a rock. He's not that way. Rakia az kanomer. Shahanomer. Machmas sheyesh lo az ponim. Mesim ponov el hakoil. Machmas ha-azus shehu ba-ponim. The einoi marchik atzmai mishum dover. Machmas azus shaloi. His azus gives him the ability to leap and to jump and to go beyond himself. Now, what he's saying is, therefore, that's what Maharal is saying in the mitzvah, that somebody that's muchen ala chochmah, he has to have the midah of azus, and that's why the midah of azus defines Yovan, because he's muchen ala chochmah, and the acquisition of Chokhmah is only shaykh through azus, because a person mitzad his chaymer is not capable, is not interested. We also find that Yidden have the midah of azus, and that's what allows Klal Yisrael to learn. The Gemara says in Beit Daf Chof Hey, mipnei ma nitna Torah liYisrael, mipnei shein azin sheba umos. Which means Azin Sheba Umis means that we have even more Azis than Yom, because Azin Sheba Umis. No. So why do we call Yovan a Nomer and not Yidden a Nomer? I mean, we have more Azis than he has. And as we see that we're more Muchen ala Chochma because we receive the Torah. So it must be that even though Yidden are Azin Shebomos, but together with the Azus, the Gemara tells us in Yavamis that Yidden have three midas: Rachmanim, Baishonim, and Goim Lechason. So the midah of Busha, the Loya Baishin Lamed, that's the opposite of the midah of Azus Panim, which is the machshir to learning. So, and we say in the Mishnah, Az Panim Legahenim, Boishes Panim Leganeim. So what's going on over here? It must be that Yavon has the midah of Azus Panim that's not balanced with Boishes Panim. And therefore he's compared to a Nomer, he's an Askanomer. But Yidden have also the midah of Boishes Panim Leganeim, Yidden are Rachmanim, Baishonim, and Goim Lechasodim, and that is a counterbalance to our midah of Az Panim. L'chayra, I mean, so the midah of Boishes Panim neutralizes the Azus Panim, so then we're back in the state of Lo Yabaysh and Lomed, and we're not Muchen El HaChochma. So if we're Baishonim, so what's left of our being a Azin Sheba Umas? It must be that they're both necessary and they complement each other. It's not only that these two midas are necessary, but they both midas are necessary in the acquisition of chokhmah. In other words, because it's true that azus panim is necessary in order to aspire and in order to acquire chokhmah, but at the same time, just azus panim, only azus panim, without boishes panim, is dangerous. How do we see? I mean, we could learn from the negative. You know, the need for boishes panim in the kinyan of chokhmah can be seen from the kilkul of Yavon, who lacked boishes panim, who had only azus panim. As the Ramban says in Parshas Acharei, he's talking about Aristotle, and he says, "Ki hayinu tzrichim lachasoim pi hameschakmim beteva hanimshochim achrei hayevoni asher hikchish kol dover zulasi hamurgish loy vehegis daitoi lachshoiv hu v'talmidav harishonim ki kol inyan shelo hitzigelav hu b'svarosai einenu emes." In other words, the midah of Azus Panim is great, but you know, if there's Azus Panim without humility, the Azus Panim brings the person to arrogance and brings him to a massive where whatever he's not masik, he's convinced is not there because he's totally reliant on himself. So that's the midah of Azus Panim without Boishes Panim. So we have the proper way is the Azus Panim together with the Boishes Panim, which is Azin Shebumas and Yisrael Rachmanim Baishonim and Goim Lechasodim together. So now we can understand why Yovan appears in the time of transition between Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh, and the light of Torah Shebal Peh, so to speak, the Nahoira. Like the Lashon Hazoyah, Nahoira de Nofak Migoy Chashoicha. The light of Torah Shebal Peh comes out of the Chashoicha of Yovan. You know, we once spoke about in the beginning of Parshas Noach. It says Noach ish tzadik tomim hoyo b'doyroisov. The Gemara says tzadik b'maasov. The Gemara says in Avodah Zorah, and tomim b'drochov. So what's maasov and what's drochov? Rashi says in Avodah Zorah, tzadik b'maasov is beloy chomos. He didn't steal. Tomim b'drochov is onov ushval ruach. I mean, so why is it that from all the maisim that a person could be a tzaddik, and Rashi chose one thing? He's tzaddik b'li chomos. And from all the drochov that one could have, Rashi chose in particular another, and shval ruach. So the rechava mitzvahs chama'oid. Why should we limit the tamim b'drachov to anivas? So the Pashut Pshat l'chari is because it says Noach ish tzadik tamim hoya b'doy roisov. So both according to the Dershim L'Shevach or to the Dershim L'Gnai. We're saying that Noach's Madrege is compared and contrasted to the Doiroi Sof. The Doiroi Sof. Why is it Doiroi Sof Loshen Rabim? So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia say in the Midrash Tanchuma that the Doiroi Sof, during which Noach lived, is the Dor HaMabul and the Dor HaPelog. So it would seem that Rashi is learning that the Tzaddik B'Maiso refers to the first generation, which is the Dor HaMabul, and therefore it's B'loi Chamos. The Dor HaMabul was Chamos, he was B'loi Chamos. He's the opposite of Kimala Haaretz Chamos. The Tomim B'Drochov is referring to the second generation, the Dor HaPeloga. And therefore we say Onav Ushval Ruach, which is the Hepech of the Dor HaPeloga, whose chait was V'nase Lonu Shein. So Noach is a Ish, Tzaddik, Tomim, B'Doroisav. He's a Tzaddik in the first generation and a Tomim in the second generation. The Gemara says in Chulun Daf Kuf Lamed Tes, Moshe men HaTorah minayin. Where is Moshe alluded to in the Torah before he was born? Rashi says, because there's a pasuk in Parshas Bereshis, B'Shegam hu basar, and B'Shegam Beis Shin Gimel Mem is B'Gematria Moshe, 345. So what does it mean that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is alluded to in this pasuk, which is talking about the lowliness of man, as it came to be expressed in the Dor Hamabul, B'Shegam hu basar. All he is flesh, and here Moshe Rabbeinu's name is Meromas. In the Zohar HaKodesh, it says like this. It says that when it says V'oid Uchmur Rabbanon, the Osid have a Moshe lekabel oiraisa b'Dorah Tufona, that Moshe was meant to receive the Torah in the Dor HaMabul. Hadod Iksiv B'Shegam hu basar, B'Shegam B'Gematria Moshe. So it's quite amazing. The Dor HaMabul was actually the generation where Torah should have been given. If they wouldn't have been Mekalkal, that was the generation. What's so good and what's so great about the Dor HaMabul that makes them Kalim for Kabbalah Sator? You know, after the Kilkul of the Dor HaMabul came the Kilkul of the Dor HaPeloga. This second Kilkul, the Kilkul of the Dor HaPeloga, connects somehow with the first Kilkul, because it's as it's alluded to in the fact that the Kilkul of the Dor HaPeloga takes place in Eretz Shin Or. And Eretz Shin Or, which is Bavel, as Rashi explains, that it was the place to which Ninaru Meisei Mabul Ubou L'Sham. So the Dor HaPeloga, the Naselonu Shem, where does that happen? It happens in the place where all the Meisei Mabul were Ninaru L'Sham. What does that mean? You know, Eretz Shinor, which is Bavel, is where Talmudah Shel Bavel was created. The Iker Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh was in Bavel, the Talmud Bavel. And Reb Tzadok says in Lekutei Ma'amorim that it's not a coincidence. He says that Chazal say in Gittin on the pasuk V'amachshei lo tachatz yodecha ein divrei Torah miskayim elo b'mi shenichshal b'hem. So he says that the Dor HaPeloga, the machshela of Torah Shebal Peh, was the Dor HaPeloga shehoya be'eretz Shinar shesham yisoy Torah Shebal Peh. So somehow the kilkul of Dor HaPeloga, that's the antithesis to the Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh, which happened in Bavel. What is that supposed to mean? The Michshol is what allows us to be oimed on the correct way of doing things. So what was it? Let's just say in simple terms. The Kol HaGodol Mechaver Yitzir Godol Amenu is in the same inyan. In other words, the Dor HaMabul was the Le'uma Zeh of Torah Shebechsav. The Dor HaPeloga is the Le'uma Zeh of Torah Shebal Peh, and I will explain. There are two mahalchim in the Nefesh Adam that brings a person to sin. One is that he feels small, he feels inadequate, he feels unworthy. He doesn't know his godless, he doesn't know his maila, he doesn't know his chshivas, he doesn't know how important and consequential his maisim are. He feels that Meiser Adam in a behema ayin, who am I, what am I? And therefore he becomes a behema, oisa maisa behema. On the other hand, there's a mahalach of gaiva and gavus haruach. That really is an expression of the Meiser Adam, that he's an autonomous being. He has a bechira and a shikol adas, but he has too much self-confidence and he believes too much that he can figure out what's right and wrong. And therefore, he's not willing to be disciplined by others. He doesn't want to take instructions. So Gezel, Arayas, Shvichas Domim are shaykh to the first category. That's Maisa Behema. A person that's involved in that, it shows that he became a lowly being. He acts like a behemoth. That's the kilkul of B'Shegamu Basar. He hishchis kol Basar of the Dor HaMabul. Emches ha'adam asher barasim me'alpnei adam me'adam ad behemoth. But now, the Dor HaMabul was punished, and the Meisei Mabul were ninaru ubou te Bavel, Eretz Shinar. So now there was a reaction to that, going the other way, the opposite way. When we learned how terrible it was when man had no self-esteem, when man had no sense of self-value, so the reaction was that v'nasa lanu shame. They started to build their confidence to such a madrega that they built ir umigdal v'roishay bashamayim. In other words, it's really what the Moshe Adam and Behema redubit gasayoma boy vashamayim kol shata tachas raglov. Man is supposed to be a ruler on the bria, but they took it to the other extreme and they crossed the boundary. And they came to a point of being nilcham bo'el yoinim. So be'emes, both these midas, gavus haruach and shiflus haruach, are critical in order for a person to be able to do what he needs to do. But it has to be with the right measure. The kilkul of the Dor HaMabul was going too far in the direction of shiflus and anova. And the kilkul of the Dor HaPeloga wasn't going too far in the sense of self, in the self-confidence, in the sense of godless. And now we understand that really the Anshi Dor HaPeloga were those that were meant mitzad their tchunas hanefesh to be the recipients of Torah Shebechsav. Because in order to receive Torah Shebechsav, the ikar that's necessary is subservience and shiflus. To be mekabel v'dvar Hashem as is, without adding, without subtracting, and without being mischaking. In Torah Shebechsav, there's no expression of the self. It's all about obeying the rules that are given milamayim. And therefore, the shiflus or ruach of the Anshe Dor HaMabul is what made them kalim for receiving Torah Shebal Peh, and that's why B'Shegamu Basar tells us that the Dor HaMabul was ro'oi for Kabbalas HaTorah al Yidei Moshe Rabbeinu. However, the Dor HaMabul went too far with their humility. And Memela, they became Rishoim, they became Behemoths. And Memela, there was Avodah Zarah, there was Gilui Arayis and Shvichas Damim and Chamos. And Memela, they were no longer Roy. So just like for Torah Shebechsav, you need to have subservience and shiflus haruach. So for Torah Shebal Peh, you need gavus haruach. We know that a Talmud Chacham tzarich sheyehei boy shminis mishminis of gaiva. Kol Talmud Chacham sheyigia lo hoira ve'eino moireh. He's afraid. He doesn't want to pass him. Is Rabim Chalolim Ipilo. Torah is lav bashamayim and it was given to the Hachra of Chachmei Yisrael. And for that, you need to have tkifus adas, and they have to know their value, and they have to make a decision, and they have to have the self-confidence. The chidushim of Torah Shebal Peh are begeder the pasuk v'osim dvarai beficha lintoya shomayim v'lisoid oretz. the Zohar says in the beginning of Bereshis. I mean, the Talmidei Chachamim are al tikri bonayich. They're not just the bonayich; they're bonayich. Yeah, the humble Shval Ruach could take instructions, but he's absolutely not capable of creating and building. So the spitz of Torah Sheba'al Peh is nitzchuni bonai nitzchuni, and therefore Chachmei Yisrael are not nispol from the collapse of the Koislei Beis HaMedrash and the Amas Hamayim, and even from a Baskoil. That's the Gavus HaRuach and the Tkifas Hadas that express the Kerus of the autonomous human spirit. That's the Nivne Lonu Ir Umigdol Veroishoi Bashamayim. That's Nitzchuni Bonei Nitzchuni. And that's why the Dor HaPologa was the Machshela of Torah Sheba'al Peh. In other words, taking to the extreme the Midah of Gavus, instead of it serving as the Yesod of Torah Sheba'al Peh. So the Dor HaPologa is the antithesis to Torah Sheba'al Peh because it went too far, and the Dor HaMabul is the Hepech of Torah Shebiksav because they went too far. But both those midas of the Dor HaMabul and the Dor HaPologa are necessary. The midah of the Dor HaMabul is necessary for the receiving of Torah Shebiksav because that requires Shiflos HaRuach, and the midah of the Dor HaPologa is necessary for Torah Sheba'al Peh because that requires Gavus HaRuach, Nasa Lanu Shem. Now, the midah of Baishonus that we have allows us to receive Torah Shebiksav, and the Azus that we have allows us to become shutfim in the creation of Torah Sheba'al Peh, L'Intoya Shemayim B'Lisad Oretz, because as the Maral says, the As Ponim is Meisim Ponov El HaKoil. So Yavon, the Az Kanomer, appears at the moment of Psikas HaNevuah, at the time which was destined to be the time of Gilui Torah Sheba'al Peh, Hoida V'Hadora. The Pasala Azus of Yavon demands a full autonomy for the human spirit. Yavon demands independence, total independence. He's Megis Daitoi, Lahakrish Masha'inei Musik. So Yavon is Muchen ala Chochmah, and he has the Azus to aspire to above and beyond. But he's lacking the Boishes Panim to accept what he doesn't understand. But the clash and conflict with Yavon in this tkufa is critical for the Gilui of Torah Sheba'al Peh, but Ein Adam Oimid Al Divrei Torah Elam Kein Nichshel B'hem, because it sharpens the difference between the kosher azus and the proper azus and the improper azus. The Zeh L'Umas Zeh Oso Eloikim. And there's another meaning because Krav, is a Lashon in Lashon HaKodesh, means Milchama, Mikrov Li, and Krav is a Lashon of Kiruv, right? Just like Vayovek Ish Imoy, Rashi says, is a Lashon of Vayiskasher, the Lashon Arami who based the Aviku Bey. So the Milchama is also a connection. The clash creates a certain connection between the sides. In the negative sense, it's like Chazal say, "Hamisavek im hamenuvol misnavel." But in the positive sense, it happens in a way of birur oichel mitoich hapsoilas me oivai tichakmeni, that we apply the positive midas that our enemy has. We apply it in the proper measure and way. Yeah. In the Machshav Vayschorutz of Reb Tzadok, he writes Nitzuach Kol Ummah Hu Al Yidei Klitas HaShoirish HaToiv Mimenu LeKdusha. So Mamela, the clash with Yavon really gave us the Azus. We took from Yavon the midah of Azus, and that's the Az Kanomer in the positive sense, and that was necessary for the Gilui of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Therefore, we thank not only for the Nisim, but also Al HaMilchamos, because the Milchama was a contributing factor to the development of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And that's why maybe the Milchama was al yedei kohanecha hakdoshim. I see that Lamaisa it became very long. So you know what? It could be that we should continue next week. I'm saying first of all kohanecha hakdoshim because this has to do with the Krav al Mezbech. I think that we should continue next week. And the Vaila, you could think about it. But the ike is that balance, moderation. It's all somewhere between Azus Panim and Boishas Panim. It's the synthesis of Azus Panim and Boishas Panim that allows us to be who we ought to be. And I wish you all a guten Shabbos und a lichtigen Chanukah, and to be continued.